They forgot to invite me to the family reunion again. So I bought myself a GTR and a mountain just to remember what it feels like to own something no one could take from me. But I should have known better. The moment they saw what I built for myself, they drove up that mountain with a locksmith, a crib, and the same entitlement they've carried my whole life. They told the poor locksmith I was emotional, that this was their property, that my brother needed it more. They thought I'd open the door, or break down, or fold the way I used to. What they didn't know, what they never bothered to imagine, was that I had a lawyer, cameras, and a county deputy waiting on my side. And that night, for the first time ever, I wasn't the powerless one in the story. I was the one holding the evidence and the truth. But before I share everything with you, I'd love to know you're here with me. Drop a simple hi in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. Sometimes just knowing someone is listening makes these stories a little less heavy. Thank you. And now, let me tell you everything. And if you'd like to follow my journey, don't forget to subscribe. It helps more than you think. My name is Lennox Waverly. This is how I finally took my life back. On paper, it was one of the biggest days of my career. In real time, it just smelled like cold brew and glass cleaner. I sat at the head of the conference table in Northline Creative's biggest glass-walled room, laptop open, slides queued, a dozen faces turned toward me. Outside Seaport's harbor was a sheet of gray cranes frozen against a low Oregon sky. Inside, my coworkers were buzzing, whisper laughing, waiting to see if the campaign we'd lived on for 6 months was actually going to land. I wasn't a CEO, a founder, or the face of anything. I was the girl behind the narrative, the one who made other people's stories look intentional and powerful. That was my job title and my superpower: brand strategist. I could take a mess and turn it into meaning. For other people, anyway. "Whenever you're ready, Lennox," my boss said. I stood, clicked to the first slide, and my voice slid into the calm, practiced cadence I'd built over years. Since launch, we've seen a 73% increase in site traffic, 41% lift in time on page, and we've already exceeded 12-month engagement projections in just 90 days. Graphs and charts bloomed behind me, green arrows, upward curves, heat maps glowing like we'd lit the internet on fire. On the screen at the end of the table, the leadership team from the outdoor brand watched from their office, 3 states away, tiny in their video boxes, but suddenly leaning in. "This," their CEO said, "when I finished, is exactly what we needed." There was a beat of silence. Then the room erupted, knuckles on table. A whistle from Gabe, a low, "Hell? Yeah," from Priya. Someone clapped me on the back so hard my chair skidded. Compliments flew around like confetti, jokes about Queen of the Mountain and Lennox for president. I smiled. I knew how to smile on days like this. Inside, there was just a strange, smooth emptiness, like someone had sanded all the edges off my feelings. I could watch a brand be seen and celebrated. I had no muscle memory for calling my own family and hearing anything but static. Later, my boss Mark pulled me into his office and shut the door. No slide deck, no audience, just a thick cream envelope on his desk. "I'm not going to waste your time with corporate speeches," he said. "You crushed it. The partners know it. The client knows it. This is us acknowledging it." He slid the envelope toward me. My fingers left little sweat prints on the paper as I opened it. For a second, the numbers blurred, 89 and a string of zeros. Almost $90,000. Not a bonus. A door. "Jesus," I breathed. Mark smiled. "You earned it. Take the weekend, celebrate however you want. You did something big, Lennox. Let it feel big." I nodded, but my hand almost on its own went for my phone. I could hear the first lines of the call in my head already. "Hey, Mom. Hey, Dad. Guess what?" My thumb hovered over my mother's name and something in me seized. A flash of past times, my voice bright, their response flat, the conversation pivoting within 30 seconds to my brother Camden. I could almost hear it. "Wow, that's nice, honey. Did you see Camden got?" I locked the screen instead. The words "Mom, I did it" stuck in my throat and dissolved into an awkward, heavy silence I carried out of the office and down the street. We went to a bar a few blocks from Northline, the usual place with string lights and loud music, and too many IPAs on tap. I laughed at the right times, clinked glasses, let Priya hug me so hard my ribs popped. To Lennox she shouted over the noise, "The woman who makes boring gear sound like a religion." Everyone cheered. I smiled, lifted my glass, let the beer wash over my tongue without tasting it. In the reflections on the bar's front windows, I caught my own face polished, composed the girl who had just changed a company's trajectory. And behind her, ghosted in old memory, the frames from my parents' hallway in Oak Ridge, Vermont family photos I wasn't really in. After a while, I slipped outside with my drink. The air was damp and cool, smelling like salt and exhaust. I leaned against the brick, pulled out my phone, and opened the group chat I still hadn't muted. Waverly reunion planning. It was lit up. Photos of a rented lake house, screenshots of Airbnb links, lists of casseroles, and who would bring what. My aunt's overuse of exclamation marks. And threaded through it all mentions of Cam's schedule. Does this weekend work for Camden and his wife? No one tagged me. No one asked, is Lennox free? My name wasn't there at all. A tightness formed in my chest. I swiped over to my email and scrolled back a month. There it was. Waverly Summer Reunion. Final date sent to a long list of addresses. My father, my mother, Grandma Jo, every cousin, every random great aunt who brought weird Jell-O salads. My email wasn't in the CC line. At all. Not a typo. Not a missed digit. Just absent. I stared at the screen while the bar door swung open behind me and laughter spilled out. The déjà vu hit hard enough to make me sway. This wasn't the first time. It wasn't even the fifth. Maybe it's a mistake, I thought automatically. Maybe no. I'd seen enough mistakes to recognize a pattern. I tilted my phone so the screen mirrored my face. Same brown eyes as my mother. Same stubborn jaw as my father. At work, I was the one they chose to lead rooms, pitch millions of dollars, carry the story. At home, I was so optional, they could plan an entire reunion around my brother and forget I existed. If I died tomorrow, I thought, would anyone in that chat even notice the difference between she's too busy and she's gone? The question landed with a weird cold clarity. I opened my banking app. The number in my savings climbed as I mentally added the bonus. It was enough to do something reckless. Enough to do something irreversible. If they could forget to invite me to my own family, maybe it was time I bought something they couldn't touch. Something that had nothing to do with Waverly reunions and Camden's convenience. Something that was just mine. I finished my beer, tossed the cup, and started walking back toward my apartment. On the corner, a low growl cut through the traffic noise. I turned just in time to see a dark gray Nissan GTR slide past the intersection headlights, sharp engine snarling like it was laughing at gravity. The car moved like it knew it didn't have to ask permission to be there. I stood on the sidewalk watching its taillights climb the hill and felt something tug in my chest, a flash of pure, wordless want, not just for the machine, but for the feeling. In my head, unbidden, came an image I'd been feeding clients for months. Snow-bright mountains, empty roads, a single figure standing at the edge of a ridge looking out over everything. A poster from our last outdoor campaign, suddenly not theoretical. For the first time in my life, two pictures overlapped in my mind and stayed there, a GTR under my hands and a mountain road that didn't belong to anyone else's story. If you want to understand why a missing email could lodge itself in my chest like shrapnel, you'd have to start in Oak Ridge, Vermont, inside a white house with navy shutters and a lawn so perfect it looked vacuumed, not mowed. That was the Waverly House, my childhood stage set. The hallway walls were a gallery of Camden. School portraits, action shots from football games, plaques, certificates, his varsity jacket framed like it belonged in a museum. There was one photo that technically included me, a blurry candid where I was half in the frame, half hidden behind someone's arm, my face caught mid-blink. It lived in a corner near the thermostat. I felt that way long before I had words for it present, but not really in the picture. I was 10 the first time the feeling sharpened into something I could name. We were hosting the big family reunion that year. Cars lined both sides of our street trunks, open coolers hauled out cousins, screaming uncles carrying six-packs and lawn chairs through the front door. Inside the kitchen was chaos platters, foil the smell of baked macaroni and sugar glaze. Len grabbed the camera for me. Mom called over the noise. "You're so good with it. Just stand over there and get everyone in." I did what I always did, took the job no one else wanted. I stood on the uneven flagstone walkway, the grown-ups and Camden assembling in front of me. Camden was 12, then all elbows and destined to be tall, his arm slung around our dad's shoulder, a plastic lei already around his neck for no reason other than he liked attention. "Everyone say Waverly," I yelled. They did. They laughed. They crowded in closer around him, faces turned toward me, and the camera eyes bright. I pressed the button over and over, capturing other people's joy like it was my homework. Later, after the food and the lawn games and the sticky plates dumped in the sink, I padded back down the hallway in my socks. Fresh prints were already taped to the walls, with painter's tape, Mom deciding where to frame them. In every one, Camden was dead center, always with a hand on his shoulder, always folding the group around him. I scanned the photos quickly, looking for my own face. I didn't find it. The next year, when I asked if I could be in at least one picture, Mom laughed and ruffled my hair. "We'll get you next time, honey. You're better behind the camera anyway." At 12, I tried to believe that. That summer, another reunion. This time, it wasn't at our house. It was at my great-aunt's place across town. I remember standing in my room, sneakers-laced denim dress smoothed down, listening for my parents' footsteps. Dad appeared in the doorway, keys in hand, already halfway gone. "We're heading over now, so we're not late. You can catch a ride with Aunt Mallory, okay? Don't keep everybody waiting." He kissed the air near my hair and was gone before I could say, "Wait, what?" I stood on the front porch and listened to the car pull away, tires crunching down the driveway, then fading into the soft hum of a summer neighborhood. I waited. 10 minutes, 20. The cicadas got louder. No one came. My phone, an old hand-me-down Camden didn't want, stayed dark. Finally, the embarrassment burned too hot to sit in. I walked 3 blocks to my friend Naomi's house and rang the bell. She opened the door in pajama shorts, eyebrows raised. "Aren't you supposed to be at your reunion?" "Yeah," I said. "Change of plans, I guess." We ended up on her couch, TV on low, a bowl of popcorn between us. At some point, she started scrolling through her phone, then winced. "Oh," she said. I don't know if you want to see this." Which of course meant I had to. She handed me her phone. On her cousin's story, the cousin who was married to my older cousin there, it was my house, my front porch. The whole family under a banner that said Waverly Reunion in red letters, everyone holding plates and red cups and laughing like they were in a commercial. Camden was front and center, grilling something, flame shooting up as he flipped a burger theatrically. My parents were there. My aunts, uncles, all the cousins. I wasn't in any of the clips. Not because I was off screen, because I wasn't there. I watched on a borrowed phone in a living room that wasn't mine, in a house that wasn't mine, as my family had a party in my actual backyard. The shame burned so hot it numbed me out. I made some joke to Naomi about guess they forgot to send a car, and we went back to a movie neither of us really watched. A few days later, when the leftover potato salad was probably still in our fridge, I was halfway down the stairs when I heard my name. "Where was Lennox anyway?" my Aunt Donna asked from the kitchen. "Oh, she's not big on crowds," my mom said, like it was a fact she'd checked with a doctor. I could hear the clink of dishes, the casual shrug in her voice. "She's independent. She does fine on her own." Camden needs us more. The words hit me in the dark stairwell. They didn't forget me. They didn't miscount chairs. They decided. Camden needed them. I did not. And that made it okay somehow to leave me out of my own life. By 18, I should have known better than to get my hopes up. But hope is stubborn, especially when you're tired and homesick in a too-bright dorm room in Maine. I had my bus ticket home printed and folded in my desk drawer. I'd asked my manager at the coffee shop for Christmas week off, planned my finals so I could leave the morning after my last exam. I imagined the house in Oak Ridge strung with lights, the smell of cinnamon rolls, Grandma Joe's laugh. A week before I was supposed to go, my dad called. "Hey kiddo," he said, too cheerful. "Listen, plans changed for this year. We're doing the reunion in Florida at your uncle's condo. Last minute thing. Flights are insane right now, and we just couldn't swing another ticket with everything going on. You understand, right? We'll see you at New Year's." I stared at the wall over my roommate's empty bed at the thumbtacked postcard of a Miami beach she'd put up for manifesting. "Yeah," I heard myself say. "I get it." Christmas Eve. The dorm was almost silent. Most people had gone home 2 days earlier. The cafeteria was closed, so I made instant ramen in a mug, the kind you buy with quarters. Snow blew sideways past the narrow window haloed by the security light over the side door. I flipped through channels until I landed on an old movie about a big, messy family crammed into a house that was too small for them. I watched people in matching pajamas argue and make up and cry at the table and be mad at each other while still obviously wanting to sit next to each other. I watched until my eyes hurt, then turned the TV off and sat in the quiet, the radiator ticking. After New Year's, I took a Greyhound back to Vermont to see Grandma Joe. Her house was smaller than my parents', cozier, smelling like lemon oil and coffee. She opened the door before I could knock twice and wrapped me in a hug that squeezed air out of my lungs. "About time," she muttered into my hair. "Get in here, you look skinny." We ended up in her kitchen as always. That's where I saw it. On the fridge, held up by a magnet shaped like a cow, was a glossy photo. At the bottom in curly script it said, "Waverly Reunion 20 Oak Ridge." Not Florida. Not some far-off condo. Oak Ridge. Home. Everyone was in the picture. My parents standing shoulder to shoulder in the front yard I'd raked 1,000 times. Camden, taller now, holding a solo cup, grinning like he owned the place. Cousins, aunts, uncles, all in coordinated red sweaters. The date printed at the bottom was December 24th. The same night I'd been in my dorm room eating cheap noodles and watching Strangers' Holidays. Something in me went very, very still. Grandma must have seen my face because she stopped talking mid-sentence. "What is it, kiddo?" I stepped closer to the fridge. "They told me they were in Florida," I said. My voice sounded distant even to me. "They said flights were too expensive." Her mouth pressed into a thin line. For a second I thought she'd start making excuses for them the way grown-ups always did. Instead, she sighed. "They're used to thinking you'll be fine," she said quietly. "So when they have to choose, they always pick the louder, needier one. That boy has the whole clan orbiting him. Doesn't make the way they did it right." I couldn't look away from the picture. Everyone squeezed in shoulder to shoulder, cheeks pink from the cold. No gap where I should have been. No indication that anyone had noticed I wasn't there. "Don't you ever confuse this," Grandma added, tapping the corner of the photo, "with your worth. Them not inviting you doesn't mean you don't deserve to be invited. It just means they're too wrapped up in themselves to notice what they're doing." Her voice was rough, like she'd been holding that sentence in for years. That night, I slept on her couch, wrapped in a crocheted blanket that smelled like her laundry detergent. The old clock on her wall ticked steady seconds into the dark. I stared at the ceiling and made myself a promise I didn't say out loud. No more asking if they were doing a reunion this year. No more holding weekends open just in case. No more building my life around the possibility of being included. If they wanted me there, they could find me. The next morning on my way out, I paused in front of the fridge again. The Waverly reunion photo sat there bright and glossy, a perfect little lie. I took one step back. From that distance, I wasn't missing from the picture. I just wasn't part of it. It was their story framed exactly how they wanted. For the first time, instead of wondering how to squeeze myself into their frame, I wondered what it would look like to build a different one entirely and never ask them to hang it on their wall. By the time I stood outside that bar with my beer cooling in my hand, acting like the reunion chat didn't bother me, the version of me living in Seaport had already been built piece by piece. After leaving Maine, I drove west until I reached another ocean and another coastline, a place that smelled like salt water and rain-soaked pavement. Seaport wasn't glamorous, but it was loud and alive, full of ship horns, cranes, and startups that paid in experience more than money. I arrived with one suitcase, the worn-out laptop I used in college, and an unpaid internship at Northline Creative that barely covered bus fare. My first apartment was a studio above a Vietnamese bakery. Every morning, the smell of fresh bread drifted through the vents, and at night, the heater rattled like it was fighting for its life. Still, it was mine. I worked 9 hours a day at the agency, then came home and filled the walls with sticky notes, ideas, taglines, sketches, reminders. A life built from quiet effort, the kind that never made it into family conversations. In Oak Ridge, they didn't ask about my job or the roads I walked or the hours I kept. They just assumed I was doing fine in the same vague way they always had. Survival eventually became a skill. Every time the family chat forgot my birthday, I picked up an extra project. Every holiday I spent alone, I enrolled in a new class or planned my own trip. I didn't say it out loud, but somewhere deep down, I believed that if I kept moving, kept working, the empty spots wouldn't feel so raw. At work, that made me oddly valuable. When a client came in with a drowning brand and a painfully small budget, my boss slid the folder toward me. "If anyone can make this work, it's you." I learned how to pull one honest sentence from a 40-page brief and rebuild an entire identity around it. I liked being good at it. I also knew it was easier than trying to untangle old hurt. The project that changed everything started as a salvage job, an outdoor company losing relevance. Their aesthetic felt like it had been stuck in a time capsule, fake mountain silhouette slogans about conquering nature. I spent nights researching what younger customers actually wanted. They weren't trying to dominate anything. They just wanted one moment, one breath, where the noise in their heads shut up. That was when a line slipped into my notebook. Find your own horizon. Clean, quiet, true. It eventually became the spine of the campaign that put the company back on the map and put me in that glass conference room holding a bonus check big enough to change the shape of my life. But the week before that win, my dad sent me one of his long emails. The subject line said "Next Steps," as though he managed my career. He attached a link to an MBA program, wrote paragraphs about how your brother is considering grad school, and it would look good if you both pursued advanced degrees. There wasn't a single sentence asking how I was or acknowledging my work. It was just another example of my path being useful only when it validated Camden's. That feeling sharpened further during a quick trip home. I was pouring myself a cup of coffee when I heard my dad telling a story to my uncle, laughing about how Camden got the interest rate on his first car thanks to my credit score. "Girl signed wherever we pointed," he joked. My stomach twisted. I remembered being 17, handed a stack of forms with no explanation beyond helping with paperwork. I hadn't known they used my name to secure a loan. They had always taught me family helps each other, but the balance had never been even. So when that bonus check landed in my hands, I felt something I'd never felt before: leverage, choice, the right to say no. That night, I opened my laptop and typed Nissan GTR Midnight Graphite, Oregon. The listings looked like art. Sleek lines, dark metallic paint, a machine with a heartbeat. One car in particular caught mine: low-mileage manual transmission, a twin-turbo engine that seemed to hum through the screen. In the laptop's reflection, I saw a 10-year-old girl holding a camera always behind the shot, always recording the moment she wasn't part of. I closed every reunion message and reopened the car listing. When do I get to be the one in the frame? I bought it the following Saturday. The dealership smelled like rubber and stale coffee. The sales rep talked horsepower and torque curves, but all I cared about was the registration, my name alone. No cosigner. No hidden strings. Driving it felt like stepping into a different version of my life. The engine filled the cabin with a low growl and the road unfurled like it had been waiting for me. My phone buzzed endlessly with family messages, but I let them stack up unread. Later that week, still riding the high of my first long drive, I opened my laptop with no intention of checking Instagram or reopening that reunion chat. Instead, I typed Colorado mountain cabins for sale. I scrolled past outdated chalets until one picture made me stop, a black A-frame in Silver Pass, balanced on the edge of a ridge called Raven Summit. A wall of windows. A deck hanging over a valley of snow. Nothing around it. No neighbors. No expectations. Two windows sat side by side, the GTR I had already claimed, and the cabin I might. It hit me then with startling clarity. If my family wasn't going to leave a space for me in their story, I would have to draw an entirely new map, one with my name on the deed. That night, I clicked save, listing, not realizing it was the first step toward a battle none of them would ever see coming. The morning everything shifted started deceptively calm. I woke early, grabbed my keys, and drove toward the mountains, telling myself I was just testing the car. The sky was crisp and pale, the kind of blue that makes the horizon look endless. As I climbed Silver Pass, the air grew thinner, colder. Raven Summit Ridge rose in front of me like something out of a dream. At the overlook, I pulled in and cut the engine. Silence rushed in, huge and clean. Below me stretched a valley full of white fir trees and untouched snow. My GTR sat in the foreground, gleaming like it belonged to someone who didn't flinch at being seen. I snapped a photo, just the car, the ridge, the sky. On impulse, I posted it to my private Instagram with a caption, "Bought myself a view." I didn't think twice about it. Not yet. By the time I got back to Seaport, the sun was already gone, the parking lot outside my building shining with fresh rain. The moment I stepped into my apartment, the phone on my counter buzzed nonstop. When I flipped it over, my chest tightened. The reunion chat was exploding. "Whose car is that? Is that Cam's new ride? Looks expensive." I typed one short reply. "Mine. Bought it last week." Silence. A kind of silence that hummed with disbelief. Then in a private message, my dad, "Have you considered letting Camden use it for a while? He needs reliable transportation for work." The entitlement didn't even pretend to hide. My answer was a single word. No. He read it but didn't reply. In the group chat, my mom joined in. "Len, that kind of car is very powerful. You barely drive. It makes more sense for your brother to use it. You can borrow it when you visit." Borrow. My own car. The same old logic wrapped in new packaging. I typed back, "I bought the car for me. It's not available to anyone else." A wave of comments followed, disguised as concern, but edged with judgment. "Lennox always does her own thing. That girl is too independent. It must be nice to waste money like that." Then Camden finally appeared. "Letting it sit there is ridiculous. You live 5 minutes from work. Be practical. I'll take care of it." He sent a photo of my parents' garage, one half empty like an open mouth, waiting to swallow whatever belonged to me. Under it, he wrote, "Mom and Dad said, just bring it home. I'll keep it running." Something in me snapped, not loud but decisive. The car is titled, "In My Name, Only I Wrote." It's not going anywhere. No one else is driving it. After a minute, my mom deleted her earlier messages and replaced them with something softer, pretending the earlier push hadn't happened. "We can talk about this later. Love you." It was manipulation disguised as calm. I recognized it instantly. I went to the window and looked down at the GTR sitting under a streetlight. It should have made me feel powerful. Instead, I felt watched, studied like a resource someone was already planning how to use. I barely slept. Grandma Joe's voice looped in my mind. If they won't let you into their story, write one with your own rules. At 2 a.m., I opened my laptop. My hands didn't shake. They moved like they'd been waiting for this. I typed Silver Pass, Colorado cabin for sale. The same black A-frame appeared. The same glass wall. The same ridge. This time, I clicked the button I hadn't clicked before, contact agent. As the confirmation message hit my inbox, I glanced once at the family chat full of assumptions, demands, and rewritten history and closed it. Then I looked at the cabin listing glowing on my screen, a place no one could claim or share or fold into their plans. For the first time, I felt something like relief rising in my chest. Not fear, not anger. Just the steady, quiet understanding that the map of my life was finally about to become mine. The first time I saw the A-frame on Raven Summit Ridge, it didn't feel like scrolling through a listing. It felt like recognition. The photo showed a cedar-lined structure with a black roof, sharp angles and a wall of glass 2 stories high. The deck hung over the edge of a valley filled with snow, as if the whole house were leaning forward to listen to the wind. I stared at it so long my tea went cold. Something in my chest tightened in a way that felt ancient, as if I had finally stumbled across the place my younger self had always wished existed. That night, close to midnight, Maya the broker walked me through the entire house via FaceTime. She moved slowly, letting the camera linger on the vaulted ceiling, the matte black beams, the wood grain glowing beneath warm lights. When she panned toward the massive windows overlooking the ridge, all the ambient sound in my apartment seemed to disappear. For a few seconds, it didn't matter that the place was thousands of miles and a lifetime away from Oak Ridge. It looked like a beginning. The house wasn't just a house. It represented everything I'd never had in that childhood corridor of framed photos where I was always blurred out or cropped at the edges. It meant I could own something without anyone stepping in, repurposing it, or assigning it to Camden. It meant I could close a door and know no one else had a key. I didn't need a mansion or a legacy. I just needed a vantage point, my own place to stand, to breathe, to exist without being rewritten. But wanting it was one thing. Protecting it was another. I spent days researching property privacy ownership structures, liability shields. The deeper I dug, the more obvious the risk became. If my family ever found the address or the deed, they would frame it as family property within a single afternoon. I didn't doubt it for a second. So I made a decision I'd never made before. I built a wall, long before anyone stepped onto the land. Solstice Crest LLC. That was the name I filed. Something about it felt right. It sounded like a place where daylight lasted longer, where the sun didn't drop the second you exhaled. I set up the entity with the calm precision that had gotten me through years of brand strategy work. This time, though, the product I was protecting wasn't a client. It was me. When I finally told Maya I wanted to move forward, she looked at me through the screen and said, "This is the kind of home for someone who wants distance from the noise." She meant it as a compliment, but the words hit deeper than she knew. I wasn't running away. I was drawing a line. Negotiating for the house felt like negotiating for my autonomy. I submitted an offer slightly below asking. The seller countered. I accepted. My signature hit the contract with a certainty that surprised even me. My hands trembled afterward, but not from doubt. It was a different kind of adrenaline, the kind you feel when you've finally chosen yourself. On closing day, Maya handed me a small ring of keys. 3 pieces of metal, cool in my palm, heavier than anything I'd held before. The drive up the mountain took 3 hours, the GTR climbing through fog and snow, the engine's low rumble echoing between the trees. By the time I parked at the top, the sky was bruised with late afternoon light. Inside, the cabin smelled like cold timber. The floors creaked softly, as if the place were acknowledging my arrival. I stood in the middle of the empty living room and let myself feel the weight of the moment. This house wasn't inherited, borrowed, or claimed for someone else. It was legally and irrevocably mine. Later that night, I posted a photo on my close friend's Instagram. The deck, the frost, the thin silver line of horizon. Within minutes, a notification popped up, screenshot by Aunt Mallory. I didn't think much of it until I checked the family group. My mom had already posted the picture there. This will be perfect for Camden and his wife. Good thing Lennox bought early. Perfect. For them. I stared at the message, unsure whether to laugh or scream. They didn't ask about the house. They didn't congratulate me. They didn't even acknowledge that it was a place I might want for myself. They simply reassigned it within seconds. Grandma Jo called while the words were still stinging. Her voice was low and steady. I saw the photo. Listen to me, don't let them through that door. Don't you dare let them turn your victory into another extension of Camden's life. Her warning hung in the air long after I hung up. I walked to the wide glass windows, the valley below swallowed in fog. My breath fogged the glass. If they came for the car, they would come for this. And this time, I wasn't a teenager waiting on a porch for a ride that never came. I locked the door. But I knew it wouldn't be enough. Not for them. The next morning, I began building my fortress. I painted the kitchen cabinets myself, sanded the rough edges of the banisters, replaced the outdated fixtures, and installed reinforced deadbolts. Each screw I tightened felt like I was sealing off a chapter of my life I never wanted to reread. When the new lock clicked home for the first time, it echoed like a vow. I added cameras, one overlooking the driveway, one on the porch, one inside facing the entryway. Not because I was paranoid, but because I understood exactly who I was dealing with. I wasn't fixing a house, I was fortifying it. And I was right. Within a week, the photo of my deck had been shared through nearly every relative's account. Comments multiplied. My mother sent a message. Christmas is at your place this year. Already decided. Then Camden sent a photo, dozens of nursery boxes stacked in my parents' garage. We'll start moving stuff up soon. My grip on the phone tightened. For a moment, the old familiar panic rose, but something steadier replaced it. I wasn't the ghost kid on the stairs anymore. My dad called next. His voice came through like a command. This is a family alignment. You're making things difficult. Don't be stubborn. He wasn't asking. He was expecting compliance. I answered softly but firmly. No one moves into this house. He exhaled sharply and hung up. That was when I started saving everything: screenshots, timestamps, forwarded messages. I created a folder on my laptop named Boundary Case. Not because I expected an immediate fight, but because for the first time in my life, I had something to defend. Grandma Jo called again that afternoon. Her voice was sharper this time. If they show up, keep the doors locked. If they try anything, call the sheriff. Don't let them twist this into something it's not. Her words settled like steel in my spine. This wasn't just emotional conflict anymore. This was legal territory. I searched for a lawyer. That's how I found Sable Drake, a property litigation attorney with a reputation for being unflinching. When she answered the phone, her tone was cool, efficient, and razor precise. I explained everything, starting with the GTR, then the emails, then the family chat, then the surge of claims on the house. She didn't hesitate. This isn't a misunderstanding, she said. It's intentional pressure for possession. I sent her the LLC paperwork, the listing photos, and the entire chain of messages. By the next morning, she had drafted a notice of no trespass and filed it with the county sheriff's department. For the first time, I wasn't reacting. I was building a plan. That night, I fell asleep on the sofa near the fireplace. The cabin was dark except for the shifting amber light on the walls. Sometime after midnight, a soft alert vibrated on my phone. Motion detected. Driveway camera. I opened the app. 2 faint beams of headlights flickered far below, slowly winding up the mountain road. My breath caught. They were coming. And this time, I wasn't alone, or unprepared. The second alert from the camera chimed louder, cutting through the stillness of the cabin. Outside, through the dark glass, I watched headlights sweep across the deck in long, cold arcs. The crunch of gravel grew louder as an SUV crawled up the final stretch of the ridge. My pulse stayed steady. I had been expecting this the moment my family realized they couldn't bully me from a distance. The car stopped at the top. My dad got out first, shoulders squared, as if he were approaching a property dispute he fully expected to win. My mom stepped out next, bundled in an oversized coat, her face drawn tight with discomfort, but her eyes locked with a kind of familiar disapproval. Then Camden slammed his door and emerged carrying a basket full of baby items. But the man who stepped out last made my stomach drop. A locksmith. They didn't even pretend. My dad raised his voice toward the door. "Lennox, open up. No one's here to start trouble." My mother added sharply, "Stop this nonsense. You're making everyone look bad. Just unlock the door." The locksmith knelt near the smart lock toolbox open. I didn't move toward the entryway. Instead, I pressed the intercom button on the wall, my voice coming through the outdoor speaker clear and level. "This property belongs to Solstice Crest LLC. You are trespassing." My mother's mouth fell open. "What are you talking about? This is your family home." "No," I said. "This is an LLC property. You have no right to enter." The locksmith hesitated. "Ma'am, they said it was their place. If you touch that lock, I said you will be liable for damages and unlawful entry." He froze. I dialed the number Sable had programmed into my phone. "This is Solstice Crest LLC," I told the dispatcher. "Unauthorized individuals are attempting forced entry." Her tone shifted immediately. "A deputy is en route. Stay inside and do not engage further." Outside, Camden banged on the door. "Knock it off, Lennox. We're not playing these games with you." A moment later, red and blue lights washed over the snow. The sheriff's SUV parked behind theirs, headlights cutting through the ridge fog. Deputy Miller stepped out, hand near his holster, but relaxed, assessing the scene. "Evening," he said. "Who's the owner of this property?" I clicked the intercom again. "Solstice Crest LLC. I'm the managing member." He nodded and turned to my family. "IDs, please." They sputtered, stammered, tried to explain that this was all a misunderstanding, a family matter too complicated to get the law involved. Deputy Miller pulled a document from his jacket, Sable's filing. "You three have received formal notice that you are not permitted on this property. Any attempt to enter or force entry constitutes a criminal offense. Depart immediately." My father's jaw twitched. Camden kicked the snow in frustration. My mother's voice cracked as she said, "How could you do this to us? To your own people?" Through the intercom, I answered, "I'm protecting what's mine. That's all." The deputy stood beside their SUV until they climbed in. He followed them all the way down the mountain, his lights glowing through the trees until they vanished. Inside, the house fell silent again. A deeper silence than before. Not empty, but earned. I sat down on the sofa, the fire still warm at my side. My hands were cold, but my chest felt steady. For the first time in my life, a boundary had held. But peace didn't last long. The next morning, there were no texts, no calls, no apologies. Just a long, eerie quiet that didn't feel like surrender, it felt like regrouping. By noon, someone tagged me in a post. My mother had written on Facebook, "We're so happy Camden and his wife have a safe place to start their new family." Dozens of relatives congratulated them, praising their beautiful new home. In their version of the story, I didn't exist at all. I was the unreasonable sibling refusing to share. It wasn't a surprise, it was a tactic. Then, an old classmate from Oak Ridge sent a message, "Your parents are asking around for contact info for the Raven Summit caretaker. They said they're preparing to move in." I sat back stunned. The only way they could know the parcel number was if they dug through county records. I checked my postal portal on instinct. My breath hitched. There was a pending request to forward Camden's mail to my P.O. box. If approved, it could be used to establish residency. I captured every detail and emailed it to Sable. She responded almost instantly. This is fraudulent activity. Do not communicate with them. Meet me Tuesday. That night, my mailbox camera picked up movement. I watched the feed as my father stuffed a stack of forms inside household member affidavits, signed under a title he had no right to use. I sent the footage to Sable. Her reply came seconds later. This is enough. I'm filing an emergency motion. They're crossing legal borders now. I looked out at the valley sky, heavy with winter clouds. The ridge echoed faintly with the sound of a distant engine climbing. They weren't done, and neither was I. The wind tore across Raven Summit Ridge like it was warning me, whistling against the cabin's frame, rattling the deck railings. I stood beside the GTR in the driveway, the cold biting through my gloves, when the first alert buzzed on my phone. Motion detected. Lower switchback. A second alert. Then a third. I opened the camera feed. Headlights 3 sets snaked slowly up the snowy incline, engines grinding as they climbed toward my property line. The beams looked like a procession, steady and deliberate. I didn't even gasp. I had known they would come eventually. I just never thought they would go this far. The SUVs parked one by one. My father stepped out first, shoulders stiff, scanning the property like he was surveying something he believed belonged to him. My mother followed, clutching her coat like a shield. Camden and Marley stepped out of the back seat carrying baby gear, soft-sided baskets, folded blankets, a box labeled bassinet. And then I saw him. A man I didn't recognize, opening the trunk, pulling out a heavy metal toolbox. A locksmith. They hadn't come to talk. They had come to take. I tapped into the driveway camera speaker. This is private property. Stop right there. The locksmith looked up, startled. My father didn't flinch. She's just upset, he told the man. I'm the homeowner. Go ahead. I raised the volume of the speaker. If you touch that lock, you will be entering property owned by White Summit LLC. Everything is recorded. The locksmith froze, glancing from my father to the camera, his uncertainty growing. My father's jaw tightened. She doesn't understand what she's doing. I silently opened the sheriff's speed dial number Sable had saved for me. Before I pressed call, red and blue lights glowed at the end of the driveway. I didn't even hear the car until it was right behind them. Deputy Cole Ramirez stepped out of his cruiser. Tall, calm, focused. Snowflakes collected on the brim of his hat as he scanned the scene. Evening, he said. Who is the registered owner of this property? I spoke through the intercom, my voice steady. White Summit LLC. I'm Lennox Waverly, managing member. Cole nodded once. All right. I need all of you to step back 20 feet from the entrance. He turned to the locksmith. And you need to pack up your tools and leave immediately. My mother's breath fogged the air as she yelled, You're making a fool of yourself, Lennox. My father stepped forward. She's not stable. This is family land. We're simply helping her before she does something reckless. In my chest, something cold and sharp clicked into place. They had rewritten stories all my life. Why wouldn't they try to rewrite this one too? Then Camden stepped up, waving a crumpled sheet of paper like it was a winning lottery ticket. We have a lease. She signed it. I zoomed in on the shaky signature he held toward the deputy. Lennox M. Waverly. I don't have a middle name, I said flatly. Cole looked at the document, then back at my family. This is not valid. This is fabricated. For the first time all night, no one in my family spoke. The air itself seemed to freeze around us. I opened the cabin door and stepped onto the porch, a red binder tucked under my arm. Inside were the documents Ava had prepared: LLC formation, deed transfer, camera footage, my report on the attempted mail fraud, and copies of every message they'd sent trying to force their way in. I handed everything to Cole page by page. For once, I said quietly, I came with more than feelings. He signed the intake slip right on the deck railing. Then he faced my family. You'll receive formal summons within the week. For now, you need to leave this property. Marley burst into tears. I don't want to live somewhere that isn't ours, she whispered, her voice trembling. I don't want to be part of this. Camden bristled, but the deputy stayed between them and the porch. They had no choice but to back away. The snowfall thickened, glittering in the glow of retreating headlights. I stood there alone, the cold burning my skin, but there was no loneliness in it, only clarity. This chapter of our family story had finally turned a page, and it could never, ever turn back. The morning of the hearing, Ava and I sat in her small office lined with folders and framed degrees. The table between us was covered in documents, the LLC deed security footage from 2:11 a.m., phone logs, screenshots, and the notarized report of the mailbox incident. She double-checked every document with meticulous precision. "You're not going in as the underdog," she said. "You're going in with facts. Let them bring whatever story they want. Truth doesn't bend." My heartbeat was steady, almost unfamiliar in its calm. For once, I wasn't walking into a room hoping to be believed. I was walking in knowing I didn't need their validation. Silver Pass County Hall smelled faintly of printer ink and old wood. The long hallway was lined with benches, the kind that made you sit up straight even if you didn't want to. My family was already there when I arrived. They sat together, an unbroken block, eyes forward, avoiding mine. Camden looked annoyed. My mother looked exhausted. My father looked certain he would find a way to win. I sat beside Ava, the space between us and them feeling both impossibly wide and exactly right. My father rose first when called, stepping into the center of the room with practiced authority. "My daughter is confused," he announced. "This home was always intended for my son. She doesn't understand what family means." My mother chimed in with a rehearsed softness. "She's always been emotional. We were trying to protect her." Their script was painfully familiar. Lennox the problem. Lennox the misremembering child. Lennox the unstable one. The version of me they needed in order to justify every choice they'd made for decades. Then came Ava. Without raising her voice, she played the video from my mailbox camera, the timestamp glowing on the screen, as my father shoved falsified documents into my P.O. box at 2:11 a.m. The room went silent except for the faint hum of the projector. My parents stared at the screen as though seeing themselves for the first time. Ava followed it with the fake lease Camden had waved at the deputy. She pointed to the wrong signature, the wrong address, the mismatched county stamp. The judge flipped the pages slowly, his expression unreadable. "Who created this document?" he asked. Silence, heavy and suffocating. Marley stood suddenly. "We did," she whispered. "We all did. And I don't want my child raised to think this is normal." She turned toward me. "I'm sorry." The room shifted. The entire structure of their narrative fractured under the weight of her honesty. When the judge delivered his ruling, his tone was firm and final. "The cabin at Raven Summit Ridge is the legal property of White Summit LLC, managed solely by Ms. Waverly. No other party has any right to occupancy or entry. Furthermore, the court issues a 12-month no trespass order to all named individuals and administrative penalties for falsified documentation." He paused, glancing at my father. "The mail incident is under separate review. You will be contacted." When it was over, I walked out of the building with Ava, the cold Silver Pass air hitting my face like a baptism. My legs felt solid. My breath felt full. I no longer felt the old urge to win their approval or to earn my place at their table, or to fix what had never been mine to fix. The day they forgot to invite me to the reunion, I thought I'd been abandoned. But standing on those courthouse steps, I realized something far more liberating. That was the day my life finally came back to me. I drove the GTR up the ridge while the sun slid low over the mountains, painting the hood in long streaks of silver. Silver Pass shrank behind me. Ahead, the road curved toward the only home that had ever truly been mine, waiting quiet and ready for the rest of my story.